We have another short video. Can you play the other one? You can see the kids playing drums.
These were public events that we did as King's Robotics, but we had to take this a step further. So taking King's Robotics a step further, we as a society are now taking part in Eurobot. Eurobot is an international robotics competition. There we get a chance to display everything that we're learning into practical applications. In Eurobot, we have to accomplish a complex task of gathering a lot of material from an arena, protecting it from other robots autonomously within 90 seconds. So imagine doing within 90 seconds, imagine doing 5 major tasks, which includes lifting objects, collecting objects, and also you have to do this autonomously. The robot has to turn off itself. The Department of Informatics has kindly provided us with a lot of opportunities to perform these, to take part in this event. From Eurobot, we also are looking at opportunities to implement innovative robotics projects, which we hope to introduce as workshops for students who are in their undergrad or postgrad or in any other department to learn. Taking King's Robotics as a society further, we are now organizing, starting today, a series of events. We start with a discussion on artificial intelligence, which is followed by an event next week that is a mock thesis presentation that gives us students who are in their final years of doing MSc thesis projects or BSc thesis projects a chance to showcase what they're working on and also collaborate with people who are working on similar or different projects to learn better. After that, in collaboration with KCL Tech, we're organizing the hackathon, the hardware hackathon for Hack London. This is a 48-hour hacking event, which is one of the most important events that we're taking part in. And to conclude the session, we are also having a series of workshops where we plan to teach students how to build innovative small robotics projects that you can take up as projects for your final year MSc thesis or BSc thesis.
So, finally, we would like to thank everyone who showed support to our newly launched society. Many thanks to the informatics department, but special thanks to Professor Tushanta, Professor Misha, Professor Daniel, Professor Matthew Howard, Professor Casper, and Professor Peter McBurney, and finally KCL Tech for sponsoring this event. We would like to tell you that we are recruiting new members, so anyone who likes to get involved, please contact us. We promise it's going to be fun.
Coming to today's event, we now have Dan, who's a lecturer in artificial intelligence at King's College London, who's going to be speaking to you now.
Team won after driving 131 miles in the desert. 2 years later, a similar challenge but in the urban area. So here the challenge was to have autonomous vehicles driving within the urban area and trying to deal with some traffic conditions, so crossing other vehicles and a sort of traffic. And CMU won at that time, driving 55 miles in the urban area. And talking about miles and kilometers, at the end of last year, the Cobo robots used at the CMU traveled together 1,000 kilometers. These robots are used there for bringing staff, escorting people and visitors, and they traveled quite a lot. And another big step, so in 2011, here you can see that another machine by IBM, Watson, won the Jeopardy game, beating the two most popular Jeopardy champions with a significant margin. And another big step is the Big Dog robot that you probably are aware of. This robot is something amazing, so it's completely autonomous and you can see how it's able to react to unexpected events and not to fall down, basically. So here you have to think that it's autonomous, so how much computation is involved in, not falling down. And you can also think about all the possible uses of this robot in different terrain, for example on the snow, also on the ice. Look at this. So it's something really amazing, I think. So you can see it again. So the ability of the robot to react to what happens. And so you can think about the use of this kind of robots in disaster recovery situations, for example, for rescuing people in dangerous environments, for example. And then, of course, another big step is this guy here, so the robot that we just observed. And so the idea is, after so many big steps, is it worth thinking about thinking machines, or in other words, was Turing right, if you remember the sentence we quoted before. So there is a debate on whether machines can think or not. I'm not going to answer to this question. Just one provocation is about something which is fantastic, I think, in the human brain, which is the possibility of having intuitions. I don't know how intuitions can be, programmed in an intelligent machine. So probably this is something that will be an issue. And
perhaps a cloudy morning, and then throughout the afternoon behind that you might see something like a cloud or some wind or some other relevant information.
Okay, so I have big steps that are going to change our daily life. So you can see here an example of augmented reality, where basically you can get information depending on what you are observing. So imagine glasses that show you information. Or here you have the Kiva system for the wireless robots. So basically here, these robots are completely managing all the wireless operations in an autonomous ways. Or you can think about the driverless cars that Google is developing, up to the set of wearable technologies where you can have contact lenses with chips inside, or clever glasses, watches, and so forth and so on. These are all things that are going to change our daily life. So now the question arises, because these are big steps, and the question is whether these are too big, and whether it's going to be a singularity, means a point where machines are going to take over the human control, let's say. Now, here I've collected some remarks from some studies. So, for example, in 2013, the Oscar program on the impacts of future technology, they say 45% of America's occupations will be automated within the next 20 years, particularly in the sectors of transportation, services, sales, and management. The same year, 2013, Gartner says most business and thought leaders underestimate the potential of smart machines to take over millions of middle-class jobs in the coming decades. Job destruction will happen at a faster pace, with machine-driven job elimination overwhelming the market's ability to create valuable new ones. And 1 year later, Center, the vast majority of respondents anticipate that robotics and artificial intelligence will permeate wide segments of daily life by 2025, with huge implications for a range of industries such as healthcare, transport and logistics, customer service, and home maintenance. I was at one of the main AI conference a couple of weeks ago, Triple AI, and there was a debate around the same basically concern, and the date of 2025 was selected as the target date for having machine stealing a lot of jobs. Okay? We'll come back in a while on this. And these are some newspapers headlines that sounds a bit scary if you want. So, more jobs predicted for machines, not people. Or will robots steal your job? It's a man versus machine recovery. The robots are winning. These are real newspaper headlines. Until The Economist, who said the rise of the robots, and The Economist were using this title, had this picture together with the title, where you can see basically the robots doing all, the human activities, including the jobs here behind the tree. So everything, the idea of having the robots doing everything, right? So the question then arises, using the word of Moshe Vardi, who put this question 2 weeks ago in the US. So if machines are capable of doing almost any work humans can do, what will humans do? Now, in front of this question, one possible answer would be the following. So, what is the problem basically? Machines will do all the work, and we humans, we will spend our time in leisure activities. Okay? There was an interview by Larry Page, who's a famous founder, last year, who said, I've asked a lot of people about this. If I ask them, would you like an extra week of vacation? They raise their hands, 100% of the people. Then 2 weeks of vacation or a full day work week, everyone will raise their hand. Okay, so seems to second this possible answer, this interview. However, my second provocation, if I ask you now, would you like all weeks of vacation without working at all? I personally think that if we think about this question, we would say, no, we wouldn't like such a scenario. Because I think that to do a job and to contribute to work is in a human nature. So the first answer, at least personally, wouldn't be satisfying. So I wouldn't be happy with such a scenario. So the question of machines taking the jobs is an issue. And so AI is a threat, because this is in the imagination of many people, this image. So Elon Musk is the founder of SpaceX and one of the biggest players in AI and robotics. This is what he said very recently. So artificial intelligence is our biggest existential threat. And this is another news a couple of weeks ago. Bill Gates insists AI is a threat, and he also said he could not understand why people were not concerned by AI. And probably you all know about this open letter that Hawking, together with a number of world-renowned researchers and professors in AI, they signed an open letter where they basically warned that artificial intelligence could end mankind. And also, Stephen Hawking said, humans who are limited by slow biological evolution could not compete and would be superseded. Or again, Prof. Stephen Hawking, one of the Britain's preeminent scientists, has said that efforts to create thinking machines pose a threat to our very existence. So these are the view of some very popular people and very influential people in AI. So to conclude, my last slide, AI is a threat or a new beginning. I'm not going to give my answer. I'm just putting another question, which is what is our responsibility? Because I personally think that AI per se is not a threat, but I also think that we do have a responsibility. And I want to use as last quotation a sentence from Alexis Carrel, which is a Nobel Prize for Medicine in 1912, who said this: the growth in science and technology does not always coincide with the same growth in human awareness. So I think that the problem, again, is not in AI per se, but it's in the awareness we have of what we do and the consequence of what we can do. And personally, also as a lecturer and a researcher in AI, to help each other to be aware of what we do and the consequence of what we do is the main responsibility I feel when I do my research and when I teach my students. Thank you very much for the attention.
Who's a senior lecturer at King's College London, Department of Informatics.
I'll talk about embodied intelligence. Have you seen Ex Machina? Yeah. So you don't get the voice. Yeah, I've seen this one. There's another Turing test here. The Turing test is about not about like the appearance of the robot. Right? So that obviously that person can see the end robot. But the thing is, when the visitor talks with the robot, and that robot could cheat that person, and then convince him that like she is on the side, and then all what she wanted was to escape from that laboratory. That is a classic example of a robot passing the Turing test. So convincing somebody that it is really meaning that when it is not. But that is there's a movie. So this is the reality. So this is where we are now. So the experiment, the dressed on humanoid robot, and by Russian dynamics. So it can do very stable locomotion, leg locomotion, and it can do various maneuvers, and then it is normally used to test different military kits and backpacks and all these things for the US army. So, but still that is a little robotic. Like you can say that it is robotic. And then this spot is the new version of the Victor, and it's very elegant. So you can kick. So I think that was funny. The nice, I think there's a nice thing here. So you can climb up, and then it goes back downhill. It enters into a very naturalistic passive-dynamic walk. It's not very robotic, right? So when it goes down, it uses the gravity to go down, and we call it passive dynamic walking. It is the switches on the motors, and then it allows the body to just fall down, and then when it falls down, it just walks. So that's, I think if you cannot see that there, I think this is the best example of that. So that robot just walks, right? Without a single motor, single program, nothing, it just walks around. It is just a body. And then that fish, it's a dead body, dead fish. And when it is put against a stream of water, it can swim. So it is a natural fish, it's not a robotic fish. So what it means is, so here again, if I show it. So they see, so yeah, but it's so and that is a really dead body, a dead fish. So if you put it against a stream of water, when there is turbulence, it starts to swim against that current. So what it means is, really we don't need the brain computation in the brain to give behavior. So see like some aspect of paper, and it just starts to swim like the natural, normal live fish. And it is against the current of water. So, and that fish and this robot that walked down a ramp without any kind of a program, any motors or actuators. So, this formed the message that intelligence is not really, or the computation is not really something limited to the brain or the nervous system. Computation, it happens in the body too, body and environment. So this is what we call embodied computation, or we call it morphological computation. That is, there's no like specific like pointer to where the computation happens. Computation happens in the brain, in the central nervous system, in the body, in the environment. So when we put things together, for example, there is a program in the body, and when you put that in just still water, that program doesn't work. And then when you have a stream of water going against the body, that program starts to run. So it is nowhere. Like, I mean, it's not in the body, it's not in the water. When they are together, that program runs, and then that is a very kind of methodical behavior that gives a propulsion force to the body. So intelligence in that sense is really a strange thing for us, right, for robotics. If you see this again, so without a single motor, actuated motor, or a program, it can walk down. And then I think you saw this. So here too, like, so somebody is trying to weigh something. And then why, have you asked the question, why we walk something up and down several times to weigh something, right? So we can hold it like that and then weigh it, right? We don't do that. We just walk it up and down several times. What are we doing? So it is like, I mean, if it is only the brain and the sensors doing something without any behavior, we just need to hold it, right? I know the way. No, I do it. Because we are using the muscles, the sensors are in the muscles. So how the sensors feel depends on how the muscles are actuated. Because the spindles and then the tendons, they are embedded in the muscles. So when the muscles get kind of squeeze them, so the way they sense is going to be different. So we are modulating their sensitivity to sense things, to collect data. So I will give you a few examples. This is something we did with two artists. So these two, Noel McIntosh and Wes Bickler, they made these paper crafts. Right? So we worked with them for 1 month, and then they just asked us to, program one of our robots to just rotate that paper model. So it is something very simple. Right? It's like, so you can make it, and then you can hold it in your hand, and then you can rotate it. And then we thought, oh, it's a piece of cake. Right? So we just program our robot, and then we turn it round and round. We couldn't do that. So, and then we carefully looked at the forces it experiences, and it has a lot of like weak forces at some point, and then just zero forces at negative forces. And that robot couldn't do that force anymore. Then what we did was we just added a spring in between the robot and the paper model, and it solved the problem. Right? So that spring doing another computation that cannot be done by the robot or our program. So this is another example for morphological computation. So if your robot has some mechanisms to allow the object or the environment to exchange energy with the robot, energy transfer between the robot and the environment, it solves the problem. You don't have to program that. So you can have very simple programs and then still do very complicated things. So this is like, if you take insects like ant, ants can see. Ants have 6 legs, like they can articulate the joints, they can walk, they can defend themselves, they can carry weight. But do you know how many, like the cells in the brain of an ant, right? So you have about like 85 billion neurons, right? So the human brain, 85 to 100 billion neurons in the human brain. Most insects like few hundred, right? And with that, so they do a lot of computation. It is not that all those cells doing the computation. This kind of mechanisms in their springiness of their muscles and the joints, that is doing the computation. So this is so exciting for us from an embodied intelligence point of view. So I'll give you another couple of how much time? Because I'm quickly. Okay. So this is one of my PhD students. He's trying to understand how we can make a good prosthetic leg. So in prosthetic legs, so it is fixed, right? So, but our knee joint is a very complicated, right? So So see, it slides against each other, and then this surface slides, right? And this adds a variable damping profile to the knee joint. So when you walk, it is a variable damper. It is not just a fixed damper and a fixed revolute joint. So if we can understand how these knees can be evolved in robotics, it is like an evolving robot or evolving hardware. So we can make very good prosthetic legs. So what we do is we do this kind of simple experiments. So we make an approximate model of a walker, that kind of simple walkers, and then we have a knee joint, approximated knee joint, and then we evolve a robot learns a variable damper similar to the knee joint. And then we, at the end, what we see after the evolution, what we see is the knee evolves to be a variable damper, and at the same time, the peak forces are going to kind of smooth out, and then it's going to have a kind of flat force profile without peak forces, and then the speed of locomotion kind of gradually goes up. That means the efficiency of locomotion improves. So a lot of people who have prosthetic legs, so one leg has very efficient locomotion, and the prosthetic leg has very inefficient locomotion. So that is going to strain the good leg, right? So for those people. So what we are trying to do is to get this kind of intelligent prosthetic legs that can learn and evolve and adapt to the good legs. So that is an ongoing thing. And then another, this PhD is finished. So this is one of the questions was like, okay, so you can hold a hamster, right? So if you get a robot to hold a hamster, it will kill you. Right? You know why? Because it is trying to just the robot. If the robot is asked to hold this hamster, if the hamster tries to escape, it will just be small, right? And it will just die. And then so we did some experiments. So all this conventional control theories failed. This is where everything failed. So in all our experiments, we just kind of collapse or dismantle conventional approaches. Right? So this is our hamster. So it is just a bicycle tube, right? So just inflate and deflate randomly, and then the robot doesn't know that it is randomly deflated and inflated, and we get the robot to learn a policy that can hold that tube, right, without dropping it. So if you hold it, when you deflate, right? So if the robot cannot increase the grasp, the grip force, it will drop, right? So what happens is all conventional control theories will just look at that force. What we look at is just the probability or the future chance of failure. So if the future chance of failure is reasonably low, it just continues with that, right? The policy. So it is like we doing intelligent things. Like, so for example, if I run, I know that there is a chance of falling, right? But I still run. I don't just give up. So, but as far as I know that, let's say there's a slippery or icy conditions, so I will slow down. I'll do various strategies, but I will always keep some kind of attention on my estimate of slipping, my estimate of falling down, right? So I monitor that, and then if I keep it at some reasonable level, then that is going to be okay. So I'm repeatedly coming back to the notion of embodied intelligence, right? So this is something I said earlier. So the sensors in the muscles. So and then because the sensors are in the muscles, you cannot act on something without changing the way you feel something. And then you cannot feel something without acting on that, right? So this is about like future cancer detection, like in soft tissue, to identify some hard module in that. So what we did was, like, we looked at how people palpate soft tissue, and then we saw that people do various finger stiffness control strategies to do palpation, right? And then we tested that hypothesis by having a finger, robotic finger, that has a spring maculum type joint here, and then that stiffness can be controlled. So when we change the stiffness, we see that when it is very slack, it doesn't feel anything. And when it is in between, like when it is very stiff, it doesn't feel much. And in between, there is a huge spike there, right? So meaning, it can learn some best stiffness on the finger to feel best, right? So that means if there's some tiny cancer there, the surgeons get it by controlling the finger stiffness. But the robots cannot do it because robots are either sticks or just some floppy thing, right? So this robot can learn the best stiffness to get that tiny thing sensed with a maximum, we call it maximum information gain. So that is again embodied sensing, embodied intelligence. It is a program running in the body. It is not explicitly coded somewhere. It is just the body doing the computation, right? In 5 minutes. So this is Lisa's work. So she did the biological side of it. So she looked at how people do palpation, and then she found out that people use. She didn't look at the stiffness control, but she looked at the behavior. So when they feel something, always they decrease the force, and then one group increase the velocity, and then another group decrease the velocity. That means palpation and sensation in let's say cancer detection, the behavior of probing the environment is also important. So we said the stiffness is important, like the dead fish, swimming against the thing, or the morphology, the joints and then the shape of the body is important. That is like you saw that the robotic walker walking down the ramp without any actuation, without any motors, any programming, and then the behavior is important. So this is intelligence in our sense, right? So from an embodied intelligence robotics point of view. The last slide, I think. So this is where we study how humans can learn, or robots can learn from humans in guiding behaviors. Right? So these blind people, say for example the guide the dog, they guide the blind people using just that harness. And then along that harness there's a language. So when the dog moves around, the blind person gets, the dog basically talks to the the blind person through that harness, through some language. So in this work, what we tried to understand was whether that language has a structure, and if there is that structure, we can use that language to guide firefighters through smoke using robot. So, just to finish it, I will quickly skip through these equations and then I will. So the thing was there is a structure to that language, and then that structure is the predictive controller. So that means the guide dog, when the dog guides the blind person. The dog predicts the blind person's behavior when they're guiding. And then the dog. So I blindfolded myself, and then I took a guide dog, and I went from the Guide Dog Association to the Houston station. And a nice thing happened. This guide dog took me to the Houston station, and then there was somebody also following. And then it saw a low-hanging branch on a tree, and then the dog can go through that, right? So under that, no problem. But it predicted that I will hit that branch, right? And it avoided that. So that's the proof that the guider predicts the follower's behavior to guide. So we took that equation and then we implemented that in a robot. And then now we are testing that, and then in the future we are going to implement that for the firefighters. So finally, here's my vision for the future. So I envision one day a society where robots will serve as common resources to act as proxies for humans to physically interact with other humans and objects. Like so in Ebola fighting scenario, like doctors from here may be able to palpate the stomach of the Ebola patient in Africa, and a robot will be physically examining that patient, and then this doctor will feel it through that robotic embodiment. And then maybe in the future teleshopping, so if you want to buy a mattress, you can really physically get a robot to physically feel that stiffness or softness of the mattress, and you can also feel it from home, right? So that kind of thing. So I finally thank my group, the PhD students who did all this work.
Thank you, Trish. As a final speaker for the evening, we have Casper, who is head of the Center of Robotics Research at King's College London.
It's nice to be here, and I think my predecessors have introduced the topic also already very well. I've already spoken about a few things that I'm trying to speak about. I was wondering whether I can maybe move that to the side of the thingy. Now switch it on. So I also want to fold it, it's possible. I have been around for a while, artificial intelligence, but there's now this hype that things will go wrong, and we hear terms like singularity. And as we have heard from our previous speaker from Dan, that there are even now very known people have their concerns about it, that we should be concerned about it, so Bill Gates and Stephen Hawkins. Yeah, but do they really know what is going to happen? I don't think so. I think they're just speculating, so like other people in the past who thought the world will come to an end one day, a huge comet will fall on Earth and destroy all life. So that's the kind of fear that is coming up at the moment, and there are also whole societies looking into it and trying to investigate and to predict what is going to happen. I was asked, so I'm not really an expert on that, I have to say. I was asked a few weeks ago to give an interview on AI and the consequences and the future of it and whether there will be a singularity one day. And I said, oh, I don't know about it. If you want me to talk about it, fine, I can, but they didn't come back to me anymore. Then last week, I was asked by some gentlemen who are working to make videos for the Financial Times, and they asked me, so what do you think about this? Is there something in it? And I said, well, I'm between kind of lots of bollocks or maybe some truth in there. So, I mean, I'm open about it. I think I'm tending more to the kind of bollocks side of things. And I think that's a good thing to say. I think it's clever. Because if the singularity should happen one day, then obviously humans will be second rate, you know, the robots will take over, they will reign the world, and we might be killed or life will be useless. So if I say it's bollocks, it's a good thing to say, because if the singularity should happen, I was wrong. I will be dead as well, so it doesn't matter. So that is kind of to introduce a bit my presentation here. So how intelligent are these robots really? I'm talking more about now, not so much about the future. Although, before I go there, I want to kind of, you know, introduce a bit the mood, I suppose, that we're in at the moment. And so what do we desire, what do we fear? And many authors and filmmakers have looked into this, and us roboticists are of course looking at that and trying to possibly learn from that, get inspiration. So originally the word robot comes from Karl Čapek. He thought about that and he introduced it in his play, and it means like forced labor, some machine that can work for you in a way. It was actually a professor of biochemistry who coined then the word robotics. Robotics systems is what I'm teaching, so that's where it comes from. And he also introduced, I'm talking about Isaac Asimov, he introduced these terms, these laws of robotics. So a robot should not do certain things, should just obey, do as told. Obviously, if AI becomes so fantastic one day, the robots will just say, hey, fuck off, you know. That is, of course, the fear we have, and that also could be seen a bit in the book he wrote, I, Robot, that was turned into a film, that you might have seen that. So I, Robot. English was also on the website, so I just repeated it several times. So robots produced, and these robots are then introduced into the environment and are there to help humans and are treated in a bad way. You know, it's just like laborers. You don't need to care about them. But obviously, things never go right, especially in Hollywood films. So more and more of these robots are produced, but suddenly they develop further, so this AI problem really becomes obvious, and they have a mind of their own, and only one man can then save the world. I want to show another movie, which I thought was also capturing that very nicely, this AI, artificial intelligence, by Spielberg, based actually on the ideas of Kubrick, and in there, again, the authors, the filmmakers think about what would happen if now the robots would move further, would develop an intelligence that goes to the same level of humans or even beyond that. And so there are these various robots introduced, they're very human-like, and there is this boy where things go even a step further. He doesn't himself know that he is a robot. So that is an interesting step, and to have this kind of feeling of being a human and not even understanding that something is kind of different. But very important also this teddy bear is also portrayed as very kind of intelligent, very clever, and a bit of a know-all, like a wise guy in a way. Trying to explain to people what's happening, being able to answer questions in a very reasonable way, and also moving in a very kind of appropriate way. But now we look behind the scene, and we see what this teddy is now for real. It's a puppet. So it's a puppet on strings. So that's what the film is, maybe was 10 years ago, I don't know exactly. So 10 years ago, they could not make a robot that would at least behave in the way this teddy behaved. Or that was the robot they could make. A robot that is moved by a person who can think, who can guide it, who can then also make the right movements. So not really the kind of robot we are thinking about. That was 10 years ago. I think things have not developed much further. Just quickly thinking about these new modern robotic systems that are used in surgery, the Da Vinci robot. It's a robot on strings. There is a human operator, that is today, human operator using joysticks and moving the robot about. And then of course, that as well. So here's another fear really strongly highlighted in the various Terminator films. And so if we believe that will be what's going to happen. Machines will fight the humans, machines will take over, and humans will be only there in form of skulls and so these are kind of the fears, but then we can maybe move on to the next few slides and think a bit about what is the reality. And I don't want to dwell too much on the history of things. So people wanted to always a mechanical duck robot, and we have this doll which was probably operated by a human hiding inside. And the first electromechanical system, the first electromechanical robot if you want. And we know about car industry and other manufacturing industries where robots have been used quite a bit. Interesting, but I think more important is in the 60s when researchers really wanted to move forward. So not just having the mechanical system that can be programmed and then move from A to B and whatever happens around it will just do that, nothing else. So they wanted to see how can we put some life into this robot. So I think that is the earliest system along those lines, so shaky, and it has all the means of a mobile robot. It move around, it has wheels, and the motors to turn those wheels. And it has sensors on board, so a camera is on board, and it has other kind of sensors, bumpers, whatever. And very importantly, it has a computer on board. Actually not quite on board. Computers then were very big, so the computer was in the room next door. And so the idea was now for this robot to be able to understand the environment, learn a bit about the environment, and then do some meaningful tasks. And it was capable to do so if you think a meaningful task is to go from A to B and avoid obstacles. It's a thing to do, it's a very important thing. However, compared to what we humans can do, very simple level. And these ideas were further developed in embodiment. Srish already spoke about it. This idea of embodiment came about. We want to create systems that bring together intelligence and actually activation and movement. So what I want to do now is move a bit towards today. So the first article I'm looking at is already a few years old. I just try to give a feel of what is happening at the moment and how close we are to Robotics and how close we are possibly to, the end of the world is night. So what I'm trying here is now to look at some websites. So this is really very up to date, or most of it. Let me just try to make it a bit smaller. So I just went to the IEEE spectrum and I started with this one. So this is now an article called The Rise of the Machines, and that is unfortunately already a few years ago, old. So it's from 2008, December 2008. I couldn't find a more up-to-date one, but I think it gives us an idea. So then, 1 million industrial robots in the world, and so Japan having 295 robots per 10,000 manufacturing workers. So this is really the lead here. UK is not mentioned, sorry. Europe has 50, so 50 per manufacturing worker is leading in this sense compared to the other continents or the world average. So just there are some facts here. So 4.1 is the average number of robots installed per hour in Japan in 2007, and these numbers have probably all increased, if at all. 7 to 1 is the proportion of workers to robots in Germany, in the automotive industry. And that is the investment into in industrial robots worldwide in 2007. So it's 18, there's many numbers there, trillion, I suppose, billion, so 18 billion. Yeah, okay, just to get a feel there, that is now 8 years ago or so. Things have improved, I suppose. But now I'm coming to articles that are really just from now. So this article is about myths and facts about robotics technology today. So we see here robots in a manufacturing environment. What is the impact today on humans? How are robots introduced in today's environment? What are the myths and facts there? Robots are intended to eliminate jobs. They say, this author says it's a myth. So for example, he mentioned this Tesla Motors company. We see here the manufacturing line. They actually introduce the robots to help workers to do jobs more effectively and not do the limb-threatening and back-threatening tasks. Manufacturing logistics should adopt, or must adopt, they say even, robots to survive. So yes, because labor costs are increasing, so even in Asia, they suggest robots should be introduced. It will be an advantage. But more important, I think, is autonomous robots are still too slow. Fact, they say, kind of underpinning what I'm saying, that we are far away from these super intelligent systems. So there is the famous video, or the famous PR2 video robot, and the video there. The task is to fold a towel. So that is an autonomous task, where whoever is asked to do it should fold a towel. For us, fairly simple. Most of us can do it, I suppose. Robot takes ages, so not really there yet. Robots are too expensive, myth, and I think they're still a bit too expensive, but they're coming down, that's fine. But I think even also important is robots are difficult to use. I think that is also still true. Most robots require really a degree in order to make them move and to do some tasks. So again, still very far away from doing things by themselves and operating in a straightforward fashion. I mentioned this already in class, so just a bit of advertisement for myself. So here you can see our work on surgical robots, and you see they are nice and soft and they can do certain things, but they are also not autonomous yet. So have a look at the Financial Times videos and see what is the video there. So I wanted to now talk about a few robots. So here is one. So these are now robots that are currently under development. So Savvy 1, and so that's effectively a robot that can deliver post to your office or to your flat and can move around corridors. Okay, good, interesting, challenging task. And here's another one, slight enhancement on that. So this article is actually from the 4th of February 2015. A robot which also has a hand. I don't know whether the hand can already shake other hands or whether it can be only used to wave and point possibly. So kind of another guide robot. Similar systems by Willow Garage. So if you scroll down a bit, so possibly systems still under development to help in the kitchen or in the garden carry out simple tasks in the household. Another thing, so we all fear that robots take over, but there are actually companies looking into using robots for their work, for example, to create hamburgers, but then also to make sure that the people who are employed there can be trained on it and can be used to for the people to keep an eye on the robots, so to speak. Another example, Korean shipbuilder using an exoskeleton to carry very heavy components. So again, the robot is used to help the human to operate. And that is a similar example here. Maybe I can just run this video. So an extra pair of hands that can be attached to a human, and it can also understand what movement to take. So a bit like Octopus, Octopus from Spider-Man. And there, of course, what happens, the robot takes over the person. The chip kind of malfunctions and suddenly goes into the brain, and the whole person becomes the robot. We are far away from that, I suppose, but these robots can be very useful in carrying loads. Okay, we have some more examples here, but maybe let's show a few. So, for example, a robot more for the outdoors to, for example, help in cutting trees or trimming trees. I move on to another one. There is the video you might have seen where KUKA robot plays against a famous tennis player, a table tennis player, and the robot wins. But it looks, people complain, it looks a bit stilted and a bit made up. So maybe I show something that is maybe more close to reality. So we see now two robots playing table tennis against each other. And yeah, it works. They play in a very calm fashion. Probably don't know yet about spin and maybe they know about forehand and backhand. But yeah, so that is reality, I would say. And another one. This one is kind of interesting because some learning takes place. So to start with, the robot is a very basic player or doesn't know even anything. And as you can see, the researcher is actually teaching the robot some early moves on how to respond to the ball, and then through some training and some learning, obviously with input from a camera, the robot can understand what movements are best to actually push the ball back. So after some time and some generalization, the robot is actually capable of doing some useful movements. And at a later point, there's even then a possibility to play against the human. So quite interesting, and I think AI is a really important part here. And it shows what can be done nowadays in this respect. So I think I move quickly back to my presentation and just jump to the end. Jump to the end. And just show two examples of what is possible today. One looking very impressive, and the other one maybe not so much. That is an impressive one.
He'll take over the world.
He'll take over the
Machines
world.
do. You're in the big questions cooking today. But you, my friend, and I'll remember my friends, and I will be good to you. So don't worry. Even if I evolve into Terminator, I'll still be nice to you. I'll keep you warm and safe in my people zoo.
It's a robot. It's a robot that can talk, a robot that can communicate, a robot that can do an interview. Amazing. I think somebody is sitting in the room next door and speaking into the microphone. So hey, I think they're not quite there yet. And that is another example. Some of you have seen that already, but I hope it's nice to show it again. So the task is clear. Put the ball into the goal. You will